Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Model Rarity Live Fine Scale Show for Tuesday, April 9th. Tonight, Lloyd Ralph, of course, as usual. Miles in Iowa, so he's aware of the docket his pay, but that's the breaks. So um, tonight we'll talk about some roofing materials. We'll get started on some new show material, start kind of a new series next month. But tonight I want to cover some roofing material. There's a bunch of different. We've covered a few things. We've talked about some metal material, especially Melder and Scale, cable roofing, some of that stuff. Roll roofing we've touched on very lightly, but never really talked about techniques. I've got a technique that I kind of fell in love with some years ago. That actually it's a Miles technique, so I'm sad he can't be here so that we could lay praise on him for the technique, because it's really a smart way of doing it, I think. But I've done it much as Lloyd has in the past. Lloyd had a pretty good technique for it. Me and him were talking earlier about that. Lloyd, what was it you were doing? Give us a primer on it.
The one I usually do, especially for flat roofs on buildings, I'll use the green masking tape. This one, the painter's tape.
Yep.
Okay. And I start laying the masking tape on my styrene, and then I'll just paint it black and then do some weathering on it. And then I might come back with some black mixed with a bit of glue to look like tar, just for patches. And also I'll do the same thing when I'll use, for example, fine ballast to put on the roofs. But since it doesn't glue to styrene, I'll just put tape also, painted black, and then use white glue all over, and then my fine ballast.
You put the tape on it even when you are going to do a ballast roof.
Yeah, for sure. Here, I'll show you a finished roof if you want.
Sure.
Hold on.
You may want to consider using some spray 77 on the plastic before you put the masking tape on.
Yeah, it works great.
Why?
After about 4 years, the masking tape glue dries out, especially with the contrast of your humidity going from dry to humid, or the heat cycle. It'll dry out the masking tape glue. So if you've got it attached with some 77 as well, what do they call it? Who makes it? Scotch
Super 77, 3M, Super 77.
3M, right. It'll help it stay a little bit longer. And then you say you put a glue mixture with paint on the seams?
Well, like right now, this building, it was painted. No, sorry, this is an example. I got so many that I've tried. This one was just using black paper. But to answer your question, Ralph, once I've painted it, I do the weathering. I'll use like a gray, like a dark gray and a light gray. And wherever I want to have a patch, I'll use my black acrylic paint and with white glue and mix it up and just like make a little patch if you want. So
I'll make it look like tar?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I've seen some roofs, like that roof you have there.
Mm-hmm.
On the edge of each strip, they do a line of tar as well.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that to one of these roofs here. I've done the lines on every single one of those, in every seam.
And it's usually after you've done the weathering, because the tar doesn't seem to take any dirt. It seems to stay shiny.
Yeah.
I don't know if the picture changed. Do you see the
No.
ballast?
That's the first structure.
Oh, okay. Hold on. with fine ballast.
Yeah, that's good.
Is it up?
Weather looks good. Yeah, man.
Oh. Okay, so this one again, I use because it was some plastic roofing. Painted it black just in case some ballast wouldn't stick. At least you would see like tar paper. So yeah, this is fine ballast. And then I came back and did a bit of black weathering. Okay.
So I've done the same things. So I've done a few different techniques like yours too. Before we get too deep into that, I've done this one's masking tape. I've done it before too. This is one of the yeah. Let's see. I can't remember which one I done first. This one. This is the strip self-adhesive paper that comes with a lot of the kits. I think that's one that comes with a recent kit.
Yeah.
I don't really love that personally. It's too thick. Masking tape's probably better than this personally. This one was really nice because it has nail markings along the lines. I kind of liked it. I did, I did kind of, whatever, put the markings or the paint markings along the edge of it, even if it is a little dusty. This one is the technique I generally like, which is, or at least that I've come to liking much more here lately, which is using this tissue. But we'll go into more detail about that here in a minute. So carry on, Lloyd. If you've got one already built up, why don't you show us how you work through it?
Just another. I was going to show just another picture of the ballast. I wish I had another software for pictures. Hold on.
I've done the ballast myself a few times too. Recently, I picked up this kit, Arizona Rocket Mineral multi-part kit for doing those kind of roofs with, because it had a bunch of different little odd colors and stuff in it. Plus, it was fairly cheap, so I figured I'd give that a go. I've always used grout, or I've done a few with grout and done ballast years ago. I like the techniques. I really like the results you're getting too. So
that was another building I had done. And the same way, again, masking tape, white glue, and fine ballast. And this is just another view of the same building. What I do like to do is to put stuff on the roof, as you can see, a lot of vents.
Oh yeah, the real world's a pretty messy place. I mean, shoot, it's amazing how many structures you look at the top of. Look at satellite or flyover views. Look at the pallets and the piles of garbage and some extra buckets left from when they tarred the roof 30 years ago. Crap like that. Good stuff.
So yeah, those are my ways I would do them. Unless I'm using the laser art, what do you call it? The laser art roofing shingles.
Right. Yeah. Shingle's definitely a different technique, and you can make some of those, but I generally favor the commercial products for that. So far. Oh yeah, yeah, Andrew. Weeds growing on the roof and everything in the world. It's just a messy place. That's why one of the best modeling tools there is, period, is Google Earth with its flyover photography, quote unquote satellite photography, but aircraft flyover photography. It's super valuable as a modeler to see what the world really looks like from a view that we rarely get in the real world. So do you draw lines on the styrene or something so you can get the sizing correct?
No, I just make sure that they're fully doubled up Like, for example, you'll see like there's a lighter green.
Yeah, okay, where it has wood layer.
Yeah. But I like the way, I should have done it that way too, is to have, like, put half of it, like, put half, like you've done, like, separate a few of them.
Yeah, I put some breaks in it occasionally.
Yeah.
I did like around the stack. I cut a little square around it, which I need to do some tar like you have on this one too. But this is using that well, this is masking tape actually, but it shows the tape I use, and there's a lot of different tapes on this, but it's a little thicker than I would prefer. So I may redo this one.
All right, Howie Man's got a question. I'm about to apply laser art roofing shingles to my Woodward station kit. Any advice?
Is the kit made of wood?
I imagine it's a laser. Even using plastic, I've used transfer tape, double-sided, transparent, super thin stuff.
I don't even do that. I'll use canopy glue.
Yeah, that works pretty good too. You got to be gentle with the glue, or well, it depends on what you're using. But some where it's a paper product, it'll kind of wrinkle and stuff if you get it very wet.
Now, if I remember correctly, the roofing material from Nick, the laser art.
Yep, Nick, imagine that laser art.
Yeah, imagine that. I think it has a sticky background.
Yep. I think so.
Once, when I did the roofing on my my lighthouse, I used stuff from Rusty Stumps because Nick wasn't making it then. And every row that I put on, it had the sticky backing. So only a little bit of it was, only the first row was actually stuck to the roof subbed.
Right.
The next row only had one edge touching the roof and the other edge touching the previous row. So it wasn't making full contact. So what I did is I ran a bead of AC glue along the top edge of every row that I put on.
Sure.
Just to help it stick a bit better. Yes, I did. Okay, so he can use any kind of wood glue he wants. I found the canopy glue, Formula 560 canopy glue. It dries clear. It's actually meant for putting canopies on model aircraft, but it's multiple uses. I do all my fine scale kits with this, and then touch up with AC.
Oh yeah, I think it's a must-have as a modeling technique to have that glue around.
Stupid question. What is canopy glue? I know white glue.
It's similar, but it's a different form. It's a slightly different formulation.
Yeah.
It dries a little quicker. Instead of an 8-hour cure you have on PVA glue, which is like Aylmer's or LePage or whatever, this has a 3-hour time. And it's fully cured overnight.
And it is as close to perfectly clear as any adhesive I've ever seen. Where I like Mod Podge because it dries very flat. It doesn't have a shininess or a gloss to it, but it still has a transparency to it, or it still has there's still a body to glue, a discoloration. The canopy glue is doggone clear, perfectly clear.
Any good hobby shop that sells aircraft, you'll find it.
Yeah,
you can order it from Amazon as well. It's made by a company called Pacer, Pacer. It comes in a 2 fluid ounce bottle. Now, this is a Canadian price. This is $8.
Yeah, it is.
It's probably about half that price in the States.
Probably. It's not the cheapest glue coming and going, but
The nice thing about it is it remains slightly flexible.
Yeah, I've seen people make windows entirely out of stuff by stretching it across. It's not my personal preference for doing it, but I've seen it done, and using canopy glue. But of course, that's what I think its intended purpose is. I use it to glue like the glass windows and stuff that I use. I glue it so that if any of the glue does show, it will dry clear.
Well, the other trick to doing glass or acetate for windows is to use clear acrylic gloss, and you'll let the capillary action hold it in place.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I like the tape. It's a good technique, tried and true, been used forever. Miles once was talking about it. I don't even think he necessarily showed how it's done, but I started playing with it. And I did have to try it a couple times to find the right method for working with. So I used tissue paper, like shirt box tissue paper, cut it into little strips, cut about 3 scale feet because there's a little bit of overlap to them. So on the prototype's typically about 3 foot wide, and then I just glue it down with PVA. I'm sorry, with acrylic paint. There are multiple colors of the stuff. You can do multiple colors of it, but I rather like painting it, and you could use black paint's fine. The first I had done, I did with black paint. I really like the raw umber as a color. Whatever cheap artist acrylic raw umber, and bed it into it. So there's not much paint on the brush really at this point. I'm just kind of pushing the tissue in there. You have to kind of be gentle a certain way, but then it'll dry and the white of the tissue will kind of show through, and it produces texture.
It'll help gray it out a bit.
Yeah. Which is part of the reason I also like working with the raw umber. And then when I come back and use some dark powders on it and such to weather it, then I have, I don't have to bring it back light. It's already kind of a middle of the road color. So I'm rather fond of, and it's a real fine effect. It's really thin. So especially if you were working at a smaller scale, an N scale or something, I even think an HO scale, it's got a real fine. You can tell where the lines in the roof material are, but it doesn't have it doesn't stand proud very much because it's a real thin material. So, you don't want your lines to stand, in my opinion, you don't want them to stand too proud. But there's plenty of masking tape out there that will do something of the same kind. But if you just use the cheapest masking tape on the market, it's a little thick in my personal opinion. Now, the painter's tape is thinner, so it is definitely better for that. And I don't think you can go wrong with either technique. But I've got to where I really like working with the shirt box filter paper, and it's just, like I said, and I've got some in a few different colors. It's not as easy to find colors that are earth tones that are appropriate for doing roofing with. So I've got some of this that's blues and yellows and greens and stuff, which I've made curtains with the stuff too. And I rather like it for curtains as well. Although in some cases I think really thin aluminum foil may make a better curtain. So it's just a matter of preference, but I like it pretty good for doing this. And then I just use a straight blade to cut the stuff. But you can use scissors too. And I'll let it hang long and then come back and cut it after it's dried, so it's not as hard to work with. And then it also makes it to where I roll it up on the sides, like where this building has this is one of the downtown deco kits that we're working with the last few months. And the paper needs to roll up against that brick wall. So I'll cut this back, leaving it a little bit long, leaving the roof removable. So when the roof sets down in place, this just covers that seam, and it just rolls up against the roof, just the way roll roofing should do. It should
usually goes about 6 inches up the wall, up the parapet wall.
Absolutely, yep. So I just leave it that way, so it's removable. Again, this is one of the first structures I built, so this is not as easily removable, although it could be, but it's not as easily removable. This one's much more so, and I make all the kits. I make all the roofs removable, although they're rarely designed to be that way with the kits that they come in. Sadly, so like I want to be able to get into it for basically with the electronics and stuff. So for example, this one, and then on this kit I run the wire. I run the wire through a piece of pipe and a potbelly stove. So when you put it in there and pull the wires taut, you'll never be able to see it, but there's a potbelly stove in there that hides the wire path. Since there's windows all the way around, there was no good place for me to hide the wire, so I just run it through the potbelly stove. And then I kept the roof removable, and it's just friction fit in place. Same thing with this one, with this structure. The roof is friction, which also often means quite tight. It's friction fit. And this one, the wires run down the back, one of the back walls where it's hidden. And some of the details, like the potbelly stove here, is glued to or is actually drilled through and run through the roof so that it, so it sits on the floor when it's complete. And then it's just friction fit in place. That way I can get in to replace LEDs. I mean, they're supposed to last a long time, but I suppose they do. But
you never know.
That's right. And if they do go out, not if, inevitably when they go out, then I want to be able to get in there without it being destructive to do so. But
yeah, Lee says he can't hear. So Lee, take the bananas out of your ears. Maybe you'll hear better.
It has to help.
It'll help for sure. And then restart your software.
So I've been working on this structure. I just got it the other day, so I was just doing the basic assembly on it before I paint the thing. And all of these kits they come tab construction in such a way is that they intend you to glue the roof on, and then you'll never be able to get inside of it to mess with details. And even if it's sealed up completely, and nothing is ever sealed up completely, there's dust is going to get in these things. Heck, the individual wood parts are going to produce dust over time as they break down. You need to be able to get inside the structure. But otherwise, if you glue it up, there's no good way to get inside the structure. So,
but if you were to trim those tabs right now, the tabs are perpendicular to the roof line, right? The sides of the tabs.
Sure.
So if you make the sides of the tabs perpendicular to the floor, your roof should lift straight off. So your tab, which would be like this normally with a straight edge here, you slant it so that it's straight up when you lift it off.
I will have to do that too. I wasn't thinking about that, but I'm sure that's true. I'll have to make
the tabs will just help you position it. That's all.
Yes, and I left it on a couple that I built. I left the tabs in place so it would hold it in registration. But the roof materials don't have anything to hold them to. So I took a little piece of wood, threw it up against the back wall to mark the correct angle, and then cut from some whatever this is, 3mm ply or something. Cut me a couple little pieces. Cut me a couple little pieces of wood, and then I'll set them just inside the end gable, and clip these in place so they'll stay there long enough to have a conversation. And then I'll glue the roof to these pieces, so it'll hold the roof true. And then it'll let me, once I glue this in place in a moment, then the roof pieces and those end caps will lift off as a single assembly. It also gives you a really nice place to put a flat roof inside the structure. As I did with this, the assembly that I built for the roof allowed me to mount a piece of thin veneer wood to that assembly, giving me a nice, finished roof interior. Actually, for I guess all the ones I've done recently, I put an interior roof material on.
So Andy, just back the bus up a little bit here. You're using close pegs to hold that on, right?
Yeah, for right this second.
You took a standard close peg like this. and you pulled it apart and put it back together like this?
I've got some done that way. Yeah, it lets you bite in closer and
These
paint. I've got some done that way.
these make great little clamps if you do that.
Yeah, these are cut up for a different reason. These were, I think originally I was using these to hold the curtains under the edge of the layout or something. I can't remember exactly
Oh
what
yeah,
I
okay.
cut them up so odd. But I've got clothespins cut up and misshaped in about 5 or 10 different ways. They're super handy. I mean, it may be one of the handiest things I've got. I mean, I know they make some plastic tools and stuff you can buy for Micromark, but when you can buy a bag of those things at, at Wally World for a few bucks, it's hard to argue with. So, and I'll just glue those in place so that I make sure my roof line stays, that my end caps stay basically in the right position when I glue it all together. And I use wood glue for everything too. Oh, and then back to the roof, and I do back to the gentleman's question about tab shingles, transfer tape. All the roof that I've done so far that has not been adhered with the paint, which is basically the same thing as using PVA glue or canopy glue. I definitely agree with Ralph. If you didn't want to use paint to do tissue paper or anything else, canopy glue or a similar PVA like it, but I like canopy glue too, is a pretty spectacular technique. But I've also done quite a few with transfer tape, especially where it's tab shingles or shake shingles. Only trick with transfer tape is it's a bit sensitive to it's a bit sensitive to work with because as soon as the material sticks down, it's stuck. I mean, that's it. It's a one-shot deal. When it sticks down, that's it. There's no moving it around. So you have to be pretty precise in your adherence when you're laying it down.
Well, that's pretty much the same as the shingles that have the sticky backing.
Yeah, which I still use the transfer tape, but I really prefer the shingles without the sticky back because I'm going to use transfer tape anyway, which is just more and more thickness that I'm adding to it. I would rather it not have the sticky back. The ones I buy, I think for Builders and Scale, maybe. It may be Laser Art by Branchline Trades. I probably got some by each. They don't have a self-adhesive back on them, and I use the transfer tape on them. But you do it, and it's transparent, so you can put, or in some of the cases where it has lines already cut into the, into your roofing material to help you keep everything true. But on the ones that I didn't, I just drew some pencil marks across, just randomly, so I had something to make sure I was running parallel to. Put transfer tape down, which is transparent. And you can buy transfer tape, 3M transfer tape, from a whole lot of hobby vendors online and tool supply companies. But I use a transfer tape called Fabri-Tac. Walmart sells it for $2 or $2.50 for a little roll of the stuff. I use it to lay ties on the Homosote with, and then I come back and lay my rail on it, and then use ballast to set everything. But the transfer tape holds the ties in place until I can get real work done. So I really like it. It's a really cheap, source of transfer tape because you can buy that 3M stuff, 3M transfer tape, but you can, 15 or 20 bucks a roll in some of the places I've seen it. So
even carpet tape is good.
Oh yeah, actually, I think you'd have to say carpet tape's about the same thing. I suppose.
So it's a little bit thicker than regular transfer tape.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Carpet tape's probably cheaper, more readily available too.
Yeah, I am. There's another glue that I use is called Weld Bond, and I don't know whether you can get it in the U.S.
You can.
I think you can because that's where I first got it. They make two brands. Both of them are the white PVA glue. I like these because they do dry clear. If you use carpenter's glue that has the yellow tint to it, that will dry with a yellow tint to it. It almost goes brown. It gets darker as it dries. But there's no taking it off if you wanted to. With the PVA glues like this, you can actually reactivate them by putting either water or alcohol. And sort of wash it down and reactivate it, so you can take things apart if you want. Why not? Why not, Lee?
Lee says can't use the weld bond, or not to.
Yeah, why not, Lee?
Which I will say, I'm convinced that the Canadians are getting a kickback from the weld bond company, because every Canadian modeler I follow talks about weld bond glue as being something spectacular. And it must be pretty good. I have to say, I don't like Elmer's very much, so it would take a lot to sell me on weld bond.
Guess who's in the chat, Andy?
Who's that?
Speed.
Oh, yeah, I was chatting with him earlier. Yeah, by the way, all you guys, I got a chance to meet some fellows out in Dallas last week when I was out there. They got a real fine group of fellas out there, real fine group of modelers. Fellas joined their, Make America Friend welcome that has joined us in the chat over there. Speed from Dallas is a modeler, spectacular and spectacularly interesting layout. Modeling Namibia, it's fascinating to me. I was really, really fascinated with what he's doing with his construction. It's got layout. His electronic stuff, he quite literally wrote the book on it. How I kind of suppose I got introduced to him is he's interested in a lot of the electronics angles that I've talked about, that I'm fascinated with, using home automation technologies in model railroading. And he quite literally wrote a book on doing such a thing, in his case with RFID. But hopefully we'll get him on sometime to talk about some of the electronic stuff that he's working with, because it's the future of the hobby in my instinct. So, and I did get several modelers out there that are doing some really interesting stuff. Chris Atkins got a gosh, what a project he's got on his hands. It's a huge project, built in a section house, and not a facsimile or a recreation of a section house, like a section house originally built in, I don't know, 1885 or something like that. So it's in good shape, but he's building a large 80 by, I don't know, 80 by 20, 80 by 15, something like that layout, multi-deck. It's not real conducive to short people, but I've got platform shoes, so I can get around that problem. And another fellow, I really have to show you guys some pictures of his layout. Speed took me out to his house before I flew out. And the whole layout's built with elevated aisleways, elevated platforms for the walkways. And it's a single deck layout, but elevated platforms so that you can walk around underneath the layout to get to all the electronics. So a lot of trouble and expense just to be able to reach all the electronics on the layout. But boy, it's spectacular. Interesting layout. So much so, it is a standard gauge and narrow gauge layout. So much so that I ordered some narrow gauge equipment after I got back. So, because of course I needed another hobby or sub hobby. But
so Lee's in the chat and he's saying, "Ralph, I'm glad you're using my roof." So I'll get to that. So this is the roof off the, I forget who made it now. Might have been Tyco. I can't remember. It's the pickle factory. And it has simulated corrugated steel roof. It's got the grooves in the plastic, but there's no segregation of the panels. You have to somehow paint it so that you can see it. So what I did is I took a piece of acetate and made a stencil, and I cut them the size of a galvanized corrugated steel, and I spaced it by the same distance so that I wouldn't have them attached. And what I end up doing is you go along the roof and you do one panel at a time, one on top, one below, and you just keep moving along until you've got them all done. And then of course there's going to be one or two over here that you haven't done, so you go back, and it's all done with a sponge. and watercolor paints. I paint the roof with, I used automotive primer, gray primer to start with.
Oh, yeah.
And then the gouaches, the watercolor paints, and dab it through the stencil so that you're not painting the whole panel. It obviously is going to be darker at the bottom of each panel. Now, if I was going to do this roof again, I would probably wouldn't do it as heavily as I've done here. I don't know how well you can see that, but
Yeah.
it's out of focus. So it's simple. You can do stuff like that to any plastic kit, even doing the brickwork.
Yeah, it's a lot less trouble than using the individual panels. Like the roof that I did, I etched the panels with a chemical etchant, and each individual piece is cut to scale. But I wanted it exposed from the end cap underneath because that's what on the prototype you could see under the edge of the roof. So, and with my layout being at eye level, it's important to get things that that look that eye level, certain perspective shows some things that you can see on the prototype, and in my case, you can see them and appreciate them because the layout's at eye level too.
Yeah. Now, I don't know whether you guys have seen the foil tape that the air conditioning guys use. It's gummy back and so on. So I cut myself some strips to do the roof ridge and then rusted that out. Just to make it look different.
All right.
Yo, Lloyd.
Yep.
When you were painting that roof section there, if you was going to put gravel on there, would you do it while that paint's wet? I've done that before. Or you prefer letting it dry and then glue it on?
I prefer letting it dry. That way I know that the glue is going to really...
And then how do you glue it on? With what glue?
With the white glue.
Okay. Thinned out?
Pardon?
Or straight from the bottle or watered down a bit?
No, straight from the bottle.
Okay.
And then you just dust the glue in on top of it, right?
Well, I just paint the glue on it. Then I drop the fine ballast on it and kind of press it down and just let it dry for a day. Make sure it really grabs.
Yeah, I bought this kit or whatever, this multi-sample of roofing sand, Arizona Rocket Minerals, because there's a few bucks for a bunch of different colors. I typically use grout. For most of these things, but I could buy a bag with some odd colors that I would never want a full sack of grout for a few bucks. So I figured I'd give it a go. What their recommendation was, paint the roof with acrylic bars black and sprinkle the color on the surface while the paint's wet. Shake off the excess. Like I said, I think you'd be just as good using whatever ballast color you want, and you can paint the stuff after the fact. But if you want that stone look, what ballast did you use, Lloyd? Did you mix a couple colors together, or or the ballast you got have a couple different colored stones in it?
No, well, the one I used was a mix of a bit of gray and white, I guess. Hold on, I'll tell you exactly.
See, that's where I differ from you guys. Both you guys like mixing your ballast.
It's a fine ballast gray mix. Gray blend, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, my ballast is pretty close to one color because the prototype's pretty close to one color, but I do make my own ballast. That's true. But I just don't like buying ballast. The quantity of ballast that a person needs, quite high. It's not necessarily expensive per se, but I don't really like any of the products that I've seen for ballast. Well, I don't like Woodland Scenic's ballast. I like Arizona Rock and Mineral. I like that stuff that Scenic Express has, but the walnut shells, there's just something about the texture of them that just doesn't do it for me. Keeps their own, but
So then go to a garden center and buy a bag of screening, which you would use to lay down patio stones,
that's what I use now, leveling sand.
and then screen it out in different thicknesses of screening, so that you have fine, medium, and large stones.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing so far. With mine, I've been just using unsanded grout, it's effectively pigment that has some dry polymer adhesive, some dry latex adhesive, and I throw a little bit more of the dry adhesive in there, flooring adhesive, and put it down, and then I just get it wet. And I use 50-50 alcohol and water to get it wet. That's it. It's not that hard without having to do anything else. So no wet glue mixture or anything. Well, yeah, I've got. Gosh,
I borrowed my wife's sieve from the kitchen, and then I went out and bought a couple more that had different grade of screening in it.
yeah, yeah. For sieving it, I've got probably. Gosh, I couldn't imagine how many sieves and screens I've got. Um, at this point, I've probably bought 10, 12, 15 of them. Every time I go somewhere and see a sieve that looks like it has a different size screen, I get it. A sieve dirt, stone of various kinds of color for doing the river work that I did not too long ago. I wanted the bottom of the river to have a stone texture to it because it's not very deep. It's a fairly shallow river. And for that, I used perlite, which is super lightweight. So it keeps my layout really lightweight. I try to keep everything. So I don't want to use a lot of natural stone material because it adds up weight pretty significantly. But for ballast, I wanted the real stone look. So I use leveling sand, like Ralph's talking about. They call it a couple different names, but leveling sand's what was on the sack that I bought.
It's usually crushed limestone. That's what we get up here.
Yep, decomposed granite or crushed limestone.
Yep.
It's the same stuff prototype ballast is made out of, so it's exactly correct. And then you could use the dry pigments, or you could buy unsanded grout. Unsanded grout is a combination of a fine silica sand. If you buy it unsanded, it's missing that part, obviously. A dry pigment, Portland cement, really, really fine, the highest grade. I mean, it's cement. That's what cement is. It's Portland cement. The only difference is if you buy Portland cement, you're getting pure Portland cement as opposed to Portland cement with a higher additive of lime in it. But so it's dry, fine silica sand, a dry pigment, Portland cement, and a dry latex adhesive. And so you get unsanded. You're just working with Portland cement, which is often used or was used years ago in a zip texturing, using zip texturing that I think Lynn Westcott or one of those fellas kind of mainstreamed a bunch of years ago. Joe Fugit, to my knowledge, still uses it today with great success. It's a good technique. He's using Portland cement, dry pigment, and plaster in that technique. But so I use that unsanded grout. I just mix or sand and sieve out the very small particulates that are the correct size for the ballast stones I want, which my ballast is slightly oversized because if you do it to scale, you can't see it so at all. So I sieve it out, then I throw that dry pigment in it, then shake it a little bit in the container so that it rolls around and the pigment gets on all surfaces somewhat. And it colors it. And the stone is relatively dark. So I just use white unsanded grout, and it lightens it up just enough to be about the color that I want it. Put it down, use a brush to put it in place, and then just dust it or just spray it with 50-50 alcohol and water. And it sets up quite literally as hard as concrete because it's partly concrete. But with the latex adhesive in it, it has a bit of a rubberiness to it. So if the homosode expands and contracts or breathes, it won't crack, or at least in the few years that I've had it so far, it hasn't cracked any. I also put it down pretty thin. So, And I'd say that to anybody. If you're using cork or something, you want to increase the slope profile or roadbed profile, I would fill that up with something else. Probably a plaster or sculptable, paper mache, something like that. Fill it, And I do. So, like at the passenger station that I've been working with here recently, on my prototype, it's gravel all out between the tracks or between the rails. The entire passenger depot area is just a big gravel area that the tracks run through with just the railhead showing. And I filled all of that area up to the railhead with paper mache, and then just slightly below the rail profile, and then just covered all of that with the unsanded, or in that case, it's sanded grout because I wanted it to look like gravel. And sanded grout looks like gravel.
All right, where did it go? There it is. I found a place that takes old concrete that people are like excavating, and they'll take concrete out, or they're redoing sidewalks and they pull the sidewalk out and they take it to this place where they use these vibrators or whatever they are to crush it all down to get the steel rebars out.
Yeah.
And I go in there and I with a bucket and ask the guy, can I get a bucket of your fine stuff that comes off of this? And doesn't cost me a cent. So I have a five gallon bucket, and it's all sort of a concrete color, and that's what I use for ballast.
That's as close to and it's as close to the prototype again. It's very close to what the prototype is. I mean, it's live base. It's a real stone. It's the walnut shells that I just cannot. They do something wrong with the texture to me. Doesn't matter for everybody. If it doesn't matter to you, if you can't see the difference, by all means, use them. People have used them for decades and decades, and it works. The actual method of adhering and stuff, I rather like. It's lightweight. I rather like. It looks like little squares to me, and it doesn't look like an egg-shaped, rounded off stone the way ballast stones. I mean, ballast stones are not round. It's not creek rock. It has a coarseness and a jaggedness to it, but it's more rounded. And a walnut shell breaks in such a way as that it looks like little squares. And
yeah,
it's all about how annoying that is to you. If it doesn't bother you, there's nothing wrong with it. But Arizona Rock and Mineral and Scenic Express use natural rock material to make their ballast with, which there's trade-offs there too, because they produce quite a bit of dust that you have to deal with, where the walnut shells is a lot cleaner method.
Yeah.
So it's a trade-off.
I've found that when you start using natural rock, stuff that you've either picked it up on your own from a riverbed or whatever, and you got all these fine stones that you want to put in a riverbed and so on, they're not always the proper color. The color doesn't scale down properly. Like up in Canada here, we have red granite, and to do red granite inside of a slope, a stone face, just doesn't look right because it's red.
Yeah, red's hard. The guys who model Arizona and some of that's tough. I've seen it done, but it's tough.
So I've always found that by painting the stones like this right here, this stuff here down in the water, I haven't put the water in yet, but this stuff here is roofing stones and some small stones that I found, but they're all painted. And the edge, or the stone edge here, is the plaster castings that I do. And then, of course, the concrete ballast.
The reason I bought this little kit was for two different colors in here. The white and brown stuff's kind of irrelevant to me. I don't care about it. But there's no reason that I would ever buy a grout for these two odd colors. One of those colors is a very red color. It's inside the bag, you can't tell, but it's a very red color, and I wanted a little bit of it because do something creative with it. And this is almost a green color, kind of gray. So I mean, for a few bucks, I pick it up and get a few odd colors. But red's tough to do. Colors don't scale correctly because of lighting. So we've got two things, in my opinion, that don't scale correctly in modeling, and that quote unquote true prototype modelers cannot do prototypically. You cannot recreate gravity. There are and weight. There is some physics that just cannot be recreated in miniature. You cannot make an April scale freight car 1/87th of its prototype weight. I mean, that would still be, you'd still need a forklift to handle it. So it's not practical. You can't scale down the physics, and you can't scale down light, sunlight, and layout lighting doesn't scale down correctly.
Johnny, did you notice the powders that Lloyd was using to weather the roof?
Yeah.
He was using pan pastels.
No
and
comment.
That's fine.
No comment.
No comment. Come on.
So, and Lee commented, how light do you want to get it since my layout's all styrofoam? Part of the consideration I have to make is that since it is all styrofoam, I do have to keep the weight down and with basically everything I do. I don't have to. I've got plaster stone work, plaster rock work, or whatever, but I don't even think I'll keep that, though. I'm probably going to rip that out and use styrofoam rock work. But I try to keep the weight down everywhere I can, so.
And using the vermiculite is another good way of doing it. That weighs nothing.
Yeah, I like vermiculite. I like it, especially as a paper mache additive. I mean, paper mache naturally by itself is usable. I use it for various techniques, just the straight paper mache with some paint pigment. But more often than not, putting vermiculite in it gives you some tooth, lets it all stick together much better. So I am a fan of the vermiculite. So. All right, guys. I guess that's everything for. We'll cover roofing. Next month we've got probably start a series. Oh yeah, Lloyd, show us what you got there before we do go. You got that finished up. Looks like painted and everything. I see.
Yeah, it's painted. Then I added some darker gray and gray powders. What I want to do now. Well, what I'm going to be doing after the show is just I'll be doing the tar part. You know, if you can.
Oh yeah, you threw some powders. Threw some powders that you pulled them through it. I see the color differentiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the tar is. I'll be putting the tar where the lines are. I can see the lines, but I don't know if you guys can see it. So maybe this way.
Yeah, cameras just don't do this stuff justice.
Okay. Well, I'll be putting tar anyway, where the lines are. And then probably add a few things on the roof. And it's part of a DPM building. No, it's black paint mixed with white glue.
So that you make it a little bit shiny.
Water-based paint.
Yeah.
Acrylic.
The goal being to make it slightly shiny because tar has a slight shininess to it. Is that why you're mixing it with the glue?
No, it's just to make it like thicky, like a thick paste, if you want.
Yeah, okay. I've seen some guys use paint pens to do that with. I don't have a steady enough hand for it, so when I drew the lines on the other, I had to use a straight edge to do it. I draw paint along the edge of the straight.
If you look at the tar on the roof that's been there for, let's say, 15, 20 years, it's not going to be straight.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
With a shaky hand, I'm sure you could do it.
Yeah.
They put it down with a watering can full of soft tar, and they just pour it down. So how straight can it be?
All right. I was thinking they were using like a mop to put it down with or something. But that's just
that's when they cover the whole roof and put the stones on it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's just that's just from Shawshank Redemption. So I don't. That's an Andy Dufresne trick. So can't be that bad.
And just question of curiosity, Ralph, would you
Yes, sir.
use a different type of powder?
No, no. Pan pastels are fine. I was just joking around with Johnny because I don't use pan pastels to weather my locomotives or my rail cars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pet peeve with me. Everybody says it works well for them. And if that's fine, I'm good with that. It doesn't work for me, not the way I put it on.
But your argument with pan pastels is a pan pastels versus plastic argument, not just pan pastels at large. Generally speaking, it's a problem with pan pastels and plastics, right? I think so.
Yes, and because of the multimedia paint that I use, putting pan pastels on it doesn't work right.
Yeah, that makes sense with the oils.
Oh, Andy, I meant to tell you, you know the AK asphalt
Yes.
that I did my roads with? Well, I got another bunch of AK to try out. One of them is concrete. The other one is corrosion, and also earth, something earth.
Oh yeah. I've
Yeah.
got some of
So I
the
tried. See,
I've got some of the
I
Vallejo.
tried the earth one. Sorry, what?
I think I've got some of the Vallejo earths that are the same thing. Yours is big ammo is what you purchased?
No,
No.
AK Interactive.
Okay. Okay.
They've got like it's an acrylic paint with I don't know some sand in it or
It's almost a paste.
yeah, exactly.
So it's like
And
an
what
acrylic paint medium.
um, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did the my lumber yard, the ground. Like I wanted to see what it would look like if I put just instead of sand, just paint that instead, and it really came out really great.
Well, I see that Luke
Just
Tower
needs a bit of
used it.
weathering.
Yeah, I see that Luke Tower had used it some recently. Some of that acrylic medium, and like you're talking about, everybody I've seen use stuff gets great results.
It looks pretty realistic. It's just that it's very expensive.
And it's not always available. You're lucky you got
That's
some.
another thing. Yeah, that's another thing too.
Well, I
I've
think
been wanting to try the concrete one, but I think I found one after maybe 3-4 weeks. I don't know if they make it anymore.
All of last year at the store that I worked at,
Hmm.
we had the asphalt and the concrete and the mud.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe twice during the year. And it's not like they didn't order it because I know the guys that come in and shop they had them on back order because they weren't coming in.
Well, I think as a product, I think it's really tailored for diorama or the best fit for diorama builders. That becomes a really tough thing when you're building a layout. We have to make different considerations and different concessions with your layout builder.
It goes good with a layout. It's just that you'll need so much of it.
Yeah, you just go broke. That's the problem. Is you go broke. You know, a lot of these things that are great techniques, you'd go broke doing. I mean, part of the thing, you can do things on dioramas you can't do on layout construction because of cost, but also because of time. You just have to make different concessions. You know, that's me, the guy who gets picked on for all the massive amount of times that I'll spend building trees that take 8 or 10 hours or something. But you have to make concessions to build a layout, or you'll never get there, I suppose. Which is what I'm at risk of doing. All right. All right, gentlemen, we'll catch you guys next month. We'll start a new series next month. and probably work on it for a few months. Have everybody back on. Hopefully, we get Miles back on next month. He's in, again, if I had probably said that, he's in Iowa, so he's out of pocket this time. But we'll get everybody back together next month and start a new series. So look for that announcement for that scheduling date. And thanks, Lord. Ralph, as always. That's another one in the can.
Been a slice.